This is the 19th season of Bass Talk Live. BTL is presented by Bass Cat Boats, Strike King Lures, Aftco, Pro Guide Batteries, X-Zone Lures, Shoreline Boat and RV Repair, Spro, Gamakatsu, Big Bite Baits, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, Beatdown Outdoors, and Sunline.
BTL coming at you.
Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, where we're going to talk about bass fishing. Good show yesterday with Brad Hallman. Kind of got caught up on all things tournament related. Talked about a Toyota Series beatdown that took place on Sam Rayburn, a 24-pound victory. We also talked about Jacob Wheeler's 6th BPT win. And guess what? Breaking news. We're going to do a special show at noon. It is going to be BTL in the afternoon, and Jacob Wheeler is going to come on today. So after we're done with today's guest, who's long overdue on BTL, by the way. We've had him on BTL before, but he's been due a BTL appearance for a while. Talked to him a little bit at the last Open. He was actually boat one at probably the most hotly contested boat race tournament that I have ever been a part of, and that was the Bassmaster Open on Wheeler Lake, and that would be none other than Bryan New. Bryan, thanks for jumping on BTL.
What's up, Matt?
I mean, have you ever been boat one before? I think you posted that you had never been boat one. 225 boats in a derby where you where boat draw mattered, right?
Yeah, I don't think I have. And what kind of sucks is I wasn't really part of the boat race. I went way up the Elk River, and I knew that that Decatur Flats was going to be a big deal, and I never found it out there, and that was probably the least amount of practice or the laziest I've ever been for a tournament. I was just really
Did you say laziest?
Oh yeah, I mean I'm never lazy, but I was lazy last week for that Open, and I was just really exhausted from Wheeler, and I hate back-to-back events, so I literally Lay Lake. I literally weighed in day 4 at Lay and drove to Wheeler. So I didn't have anything really prepped for it. So yeah, I was kind of lazy. I went out there on the flats a little bit, and all the boats is just like, I've got to get away from this. And I went up the Elk River, and I got enough bites. I thought I could do decent. And, I got them in the tournament. Again, had a decent day 1. Day 2, caught a ton of fish. I tried to boat flip a 6-pounder and it come off, and that one fish would have got me a check, but nowhere near the top 10. So
on
yeah,
ELD, or what were you?
Huh?
Was that on a jig or a blade?
Everything. So I caught them on swimming a white jig. I caught them flipping, caught them buzz baiting, and caught them on a spinnerbait. I think I caught a few on the chatterbait.
What'd you try to boat flip that big one on, though?
On a swim jig.
Oh, that's understandable.
Yeah, I mean, big line, big rod, big hook. I boat flip them all the time on it, and honestly, that's the only one I ever remember losing. Big one, anyways.
Now, I went up the Elk River and practiced to the bridge, and I caught. Well, dude, I could have done 150 white bass and 150 casts off the bridge, but I also caught some bass. But let me ask you this, because the water was blown out in practice in the Elk. There was all sorts of debris floating down it. I started to go up there, and I said, man, this looks like it's getting sketchy. It looks like it's super blown out. Screw it. So I went about to that boat ramp just past the bridge. Then I turned around and never went back up there. What was it that made you keep going up that Elk? Because obviously there were some bites to have. You were a way to get away from the crowd. I mean, that was a pro move in hindsight.
So, Wheeler years ago was a great lake. And then the last 10, 12, 15 years, it's not been that good. And back in the day when it was good, the flats were the deal. It had grass. The grass went away. Then the elk basically become the deal. And I've only been there, I think, twice as a co-angler and once as a boater. And it was like 2015 was the only time I've been there as a boater. Finished fourth, I believe, in a Toyota. And I caught them all pretty much in one creek up the elk, and everybody in the top 10 was in the elk. All the major tournaments, other than Cox, when Cox won the cup, have basically been won in the elk. But now Wheeler's back. Now the flats are back. The grass is back to an extent. You know, it wasn't really. I didn't see the grass that I was kind of led to believe was there. You know, the last couple of years here and how good it's came back. But obviously the flats are back. But kind of backing up, for so long the elk was king. I had a top 10 there. Actually, the same creek that I top 10 there, I wound up fishing most of my tournament there this tournament. And yeah, I mean, I wanted to get away from the crowd. I was getting bites. I was comfortable. It just coming off a top 10 at Lay Lake. I was fishing really similar, and it was going well, and I knew I was going to get some bites. And when you get enough bites, typically you get a couple of the right ones, and I did, but I didn't capitalize on all of them.
During practice, when you go up I think a lot of people struggle with this, me included. When you go up a offshoot, a creek, a river, something that you can go a long way up, and you have a limited practice time, do you run as far as you can up it? Do you fish your way back it? How do you know when to bail on it and that you're not a quarter mile away from the glory? Or you know what I mean? You've got a main lake, you've got something that you want to test. How do you determine if it's worth your time exploring more, I guess, is the easiest way?
You know, I mean, that's a good question. I don't really know the best way to answer it. I mean, in that situation, I knew a certain area was historically good.
Okay.
So that, like, I kind of went straight to it just because I knew it from the past. But erase everything you know about a lake. You go to a new place and don't know anything. I think, you know, from research, whether it be, you know, what you read or what you see on Google Earth, you can kind of break that down. Oh, this, you know, should be good, or that should be good. And if you try that and it doesn't work and you still kind of want to push it a little bit, then you kind of got to get somewhat lucky to stumble across the right deal. I mean, because most of the Elk River looks almost the same. And obviously there's some creeks. Sometimes you got a little steeper bank, maybe a bluffy bank, but there's a lot of flats with a lot of wood. I've been a lot of places all over the country. I've never seen anywhere like the Elk River. It's, I mean, it's literally, it's a river with these dirt shallow flats with wood like floating, or not. It got there because it was floating, but just log jams all up and down that thing constantly. And it's like a needle in a haystack out there on that deal, trying to find those fish, but they do get out there. But I personally was in a creek, you know.
I got you.
And like you said, the river was blown out. So a lot of those creeks are spring fed. So when you get a big rain, they'll dirty up, but they immediately, you know, the next day, it takes very, very limited amount of time to clean those creeks up when they're spring fed.
One of the things that I thought was interesting at Wheeler was I got there at, like, you know, you can be on the water 30 minutes before first light and 30 minutes after first light. And you guys were just coming off, and you were just coming off, like you mentioned, a fourth place finish at the Elite Series on Lay Lake to get your season back on track. You went directly to Wheeler from there. Same thing with Clark Wenlet and a couple other guys that were fishing it. But I get to that ramp at 5 a.m., which it felt like it got light at like 2 a.m. there when you're trying to find it. But I get to that ramp, and out of the 10 guys that were at that ramp, 4 of them were Elite Series guys who were just coming off of the Lay Lake tournament, had been traveling and on the road for a week and a half. And you guys were still the earliest to put in, ready to go practice that. And it kind of struck me. I remember thinking, man, it would be real easy to sleep in on these mornings. It'd be real easy to not go as hard, but that's why you guys are where you are, because you just do it day after day after day and don't take any of those days off, and got up at 4 a.m. after fishing an Elite Series tournament to get to that ramp for the Open the earliest. I thought that was pretty cool and kind of stuck in my head.
Yeah. One thing that I never want to do is let somebody outwork me. Now, Wheeler, they outworked me, but that's probably one of the only tournaments that I've ever been outworked. Now, I've been outfished a lot, but I feel like if I let somebody outwork me, I'm just beating myself. But yeah, I mean, we get 30 minutes prior to official sunrise, 30 minutes after official sunset, and during the elites, especially, like, I use every single one of those minutes. I have alarm set every morning. I'm sitting there in my boat. Everything's ready. I've got my motor running. And when my alarm goes off and it's official, legally official practice,
Really?
I take off. And especially this time of year, like Wheeler, Lay, Santee, Murray, they're all shad spawn tournaments. Mm-hmm. Or, Murray was shad spawn and herring spawn, but that first little bit of time of practice each day is very critical. And Lay Lake caught a lot of my fish on the shad spawn. Santee, not the greatest tournament the first day. I had a decent bag the first day, shad spawn. We're not going to talk about Lake Murray because we're not. But and then even Wheeler, we got so many places, I get them all confused.
Yeah, you're doing a good job.
Wherever I was at last week. But yeah, so Wheeler, I mean, there was a huge shad spawn, and even though I ran 40 miles from takeoff, and we were already taking off an hour after daylight, 30, 45 minutes after daylight, whatever it was, with that shad spawn only lasting so long, still the fish that I were catching were there a lot because of the shad spawn.
Mm-hmm. I've gotten the shad spawn seems to be really prevalent, not only on the Elite Series this year, also in the Opens. It played big at Toledo Bend. It played big at Bugs Island. It played big here at Wheeler Lake. I haven't really talked about this on BTL before, but what are some of your tips? I've actually had some guys in my DMs going, "Oh, I hear people talk about the shad spawn. How the hell do you find it? How do you know you're on one? What exactly is it?" And even me, knowing what it is, I have a tough time, and we talked a little bit about this kind of during practice, but I have a tough time driving down the lake and going, I need to check there for a shad spawn. I need to check there for a shad spawn. It's kind of like this mythical thing. And like you talk to your buddies and they're like, oh, I'm on an epic shad spawn bite. And you're like, you lucky son of a gun. And then you fish around everywhere because you only get like an hour and a half in the morning typically to find it unless cloud cover produces it. What are some easy ways for guys to at least put themselves in an area to see and recognize what the hell a shad spawn is?
So until you travel across the country and see it multiple different ways, you feel like however it happens at your house is how it happens everywhere. Me growing up in North Carolina, not even the Carolinas, but just North Carolina, Lake Wiley, Lake Norman, the shad spawn, it was riprap banks and docks. And that's probably, marina docks, just regular docks, and that's what we fished. You get out to the TVA and that kind of places. Yes, they use that stuff. They spawn on that stuff, but they also spawn on the shallow bars, with the gravel bars, hard bottom. I've seen other places where they'll actually spawn on brush piles or on timber out in the middle of the lake. And then you go to a grass lake, they spawn on the grass. So it definitely depends on where you're at, what your lake has in it, but the birds are the biggest thing. And meaning like blue heron, you'll see white birds, blue birds sitting on the banks, sitting in the trees, sitting on the grass line. Santee, they spawn on cypress trees big time. You'll see the birds sitting in the cypress trees, and that's That's basically how I would start my morning at Santee. Every morning was I'd ride until I'd see the birds sitting in the trees. And you want to see them sitting low to the water also. When they're sitting up high in the trees, they're looking for it, but they haven't found it. So that's the easiest and number one thing to look for is the birds that are eating the shad, but also, you'll see the shad flickering, on the trees, in the grass. Actually, they won at Wheeler. At 11:45 during the middle of the day, I'm fishing some wood on a flat up there in the Elk, and I just see one little ball of shad go up and spin circles for about 30, 45 seconds. And like, that's what they were doing. They were spawning. It was very brief, but it let me know they were still doing it. And that's rare to see it that late during the day. But first thing in the morning is pretty hardcore. It goes on, and you'll see the shad flickering all over the place. But just because you find a shad spawn doesn't mean you're going to find the fish. A lot of times you'll see them blow open. But if you're fishing the shad spawn and you're not getting bit, or you're not seeing fish blow up, you're probably not around a lot of fish. So just kind of keep going, and until you start getting bit or see the fish blowing up.
In your opinion, is a spinner bait the best way to find a shad spawn, to see if the bass the shad are following your blades back in? Like, I've over this past month and a half, I've caught more fish on a spinner bait up shallow in the opens because with marginal success, but more fish up shallow because I'm using it like a search bait, not to catch fish, but to see what's following it back in. Is there any bait better than a spinner bait that those shad will?
As far as, like, if you're not visually seeing it,
yeah,
because especially on those shallow bars, a lot of times you don't visually see it.
Yep.
And like the brush piles I was talking about, most of the time you don't see it, or the timber. But yes, a spinner bait, like, they'll follow other stuff as well, chatterbait, whatever it may be. But a spinner bait is probably the best tool for actually seeing the shad follow your bait back to the boat. And for you to know for sure that that's what's going on, if you're not seeing them flicker, if you're not seeing the birds there, and it gets a lot of bites. It's a really strong tool for the shad spawn, but it's not always the best tool for actually catching fish. Yes, it gets bit and catches a lot of fish doing that, but sometimes a different bait's better. Like at Lay Lake, the first 2 days, I was basically throwing a white or a shad colored greenfish tackle gaff swim jig in the thicker grass, and then outside of the grass in the thinner stuff just in front of it or in the cabbage, I was throwing a chatterbait. That was the first 2 days, and then day 3 and 4, I just felt like maybe I could get a bigger bite if I threw a buzzbait. Now the buzzbait, sure, the shad may follow it, but you're not going to see them as good because of the commotion it's creating. And, you're just, when you get it back to the boat, you're not really just going to see the shad like you would on the spinnerbait. But a lot of times I feel like that can get a bigger bite. And if you think about a buzzbait, let's think about the way the shad look when they're spawning. Like I said, they're spinning around in circles. They're making a commotion. A buzzbait somewhat does that same thing. It's making a commotion. It's flashing, that blade spinning. It's flashing. You got a zoom horny toad on the back. It looks like a couple more shad flickering around. And typically, a shad don't just sit there and spawn. They'll move. They're constantly moving around, whether it's moving around the dock float, moving down the grass line, moving around the timber. So the buzzbait is constantly moving. It's somewhat basically identical to what a shad spawn looks like. It's just a little faster. There's a ton of tools. I mean, a swim bait, chatterbait, swim jig, spinner bait. I mean, those are probably my number ones right there. If I'm fishing a shad spawn, I'm going to have those baits tied on.
And always white.
Maybe not necessarily white, but shad. Yes, definitely shad. The clearer the water, the more toned down, the more natural I want. Like I actually had Zoom pour me some special horny toads in blue glimmer, because it's a shad color, but it's toned down. It's not as loud. It's not as bright as just a white. And that's what I caught most. Well, the buzzbait fish I caught at Lay and Wheeler were on that blue glimmer. I really like it. It looks really natural in just slightly off colored water or clean water. Now, if it was dirtier, yeah, that's when I would go to a more bold, just straight white.
Okay. This is some good stuff. Now, I also noticed there was a different type of shad that was out on the bars. They had like yellow fins or yellow things on the tail. It almost looked like a chartreuse sexy shad color to them. I mean, what kind of shad are those? They weren't thread fins. They're
I
like,
didn't see it.
oh, you haven't seen those? They had like little yellow outlines around the fins because you catch them a lot, you know, on a bait they would get, and they were a little bit bigger, and they were out on the bars.
I mean, maybe hickory shad or something. I know they're in the Tennessee River. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I thought it was going to go down, but
yeah,
I mean, pounds.
I think yes, this shad is different than that shad. What if they're different types?
Yeah.
But I think when the bass are
shad's a shad.
They just like shad.
I will say one more thing, and then we'll move on past the shad spawn. So, final day of practice, I'm running down the lake looking for birds. It's just getting light. I find a bank. It's got some birds on it. Catch like a 4.5 pounder on a spinner bait. Mark it. Cool. We'll come back here. And then I go into this cut, and I mean, dude, holy freaking grail. There's 15 blue herons and 40 of the white birds. It's on a riprap bank that drops off into 6 foot. It's got good depth right up on the riprap. It's about a 500-yard stretch. And I said, oh, I'm just gonna freaking go down here. I'll make a couple casts, wait till I get a bite. So I go over there. I laughed about this hard. I go over there, and there's not another bird in the entire pocket. And as I go down the bank, you know, you spook them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I get 20 yards down the bank, and I realize there is no longer a single, and they're on the water looking. I realize there is no longer a single bird left on that bank. They have all flown to the opposite bank a quarter mile away, and now they are lined up on the opposite bank where when I rolled up there had not been a single bird, and now it looks like the shad spawn's going off insane over there. So I fish the rest of the bank. Then I go over to the other side. They get up. They fly right back to where they had been on my side. And now I realize, hell, I don't know where the hell these shad are spotted, because if there's been a boat that's driven past there, those suckers are going to leave. It was just funny how those birds all move in one kind of unit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was somewhat like that at Santee. You know, that's another key about getting out there as soon as you possibly can, because a lot of guys are lazy. A lot of guys like to sleep in. Be honest with you, I like to sleep in, but I just can't. That's not part of my job. But they will. A boat will definitely push them and move them around.
All right, we're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, I'm going to get into Lay Lake. I feel like you put a lot of pressure on yourself to perform in these tournaments, and for the vast majority of your career, you're top 10 and everything, but it seems like maybe you were pushing a little hard, and then you've got the whole don't suck thing, run around like a chicken with your head cut off. I know Dave Rush marshaled with you one day at Seminole, and he's like, dude, New just goes. Like, there is one speed, and he doesn't care about boat lanes, and he just goes. He said, I was exhausted just being a part of it as fast as he went. But I want to talk about getting back on track and the outlook for the rest of your year. So BTL on a Tuesday. Bryan New will be back right after this.
The new Puma STS has been redesigned from the ground up. With the angler, design, function, and performance in mind, nothing on this new offering was compromised, and the only thing carried over from the previous version is the name. Based on the Soft Touch series hull that started with the flagship Jaguar, this new model is nimble and performs incredibly well at all speeds with either a 250 or 300 horsepower engine. Featuring a new 96-inch wide-body footprint, this hull measures out at 20 foot 7 inches in length. Industry-leading design coupled with tournament-winning performance. The Puma STS from Basscat. Feel the rush.
brand, top on all, Strike King.
So I'm a big guy, you know, a lunker, a two sandwich eating kind of man. And on behalf of all of those bigger, I gotta say it once and for all, it's bad enough that the fish look smaller in our hands. The last thing we should have to worry about is getting quality outdoor clothing that fits. Avco, any fish, any water.
Elite Series Pro Daryl Gleason here. My Pro Guide batteries keep me going on those long tournament days and long practice days. Always plenty of juice, never fail. The best part about Pro Guide batteries, it's the people behind the company. They have over 40 years experience in the battery business, keeping all of us fishermen out on the water longer, catching more fish. Check them out at ProGuideBatteries.com.
What's up, Bass Talk Live fans? Brandon Polnick here. And ever since I won a couple Bassmaster Elite Series events on X-Zone Lures, I've been getting a bunch of questions of what makes them so special and different. And really, the truth is, it's in the details. The little details, things like no cheap fillers in their plastic. That gives you more lifelike action, more realistic and vibrant colors. But don't just take my word for it. Go to www.xzonelures.com and check them out for yourself.
All right. Welcome back, BTL, on a Tuesday. Talking with Bryan New, and if you saw that last commercial there, that was Brandon Polnick talking about X-Zone, and I talked with the guys at X-Zone, and I mentioned yesterday we are going to have a giveaway. We're going to do a little bit in the second half of the show. You good for a little question and answer in the second half of the show?
Bring it.
Just what we need, you drinking a Red Bull. In the second half of the show, we're going to do a question and answer with Bryan New, and then I'll just randomly pick one of the good questions and six packs. They sent 12 colors, one of each pack, but I'll send 6 of the new Stealth Invader, little drop shot bait that's going to play up north. So get your questions ready for Bryan New in the second half of the show for that new Stealth Invader. Before the break, I wanted to talk about, I wanted to talk about you getting back on track. And I think that going into the 2023 season, it was a perfect schedule for you, Bryan. And correct me if I'm wrong. You end the 2022 season on an absolute heater. You have 3 top 10 finishes. You almost win an Open at Lake Hartwell in your backyard. But you kicked the season off in Florida, a place where you won your first Elite Series event. You have a Bassmaster Classic on the Tennessee River. But then between the Opens and the Elite Series, everything is on Alabama, where you have history, and South Carolina, where you have history. As good as you were fishing, you had to be salivating about the 2023 season when this thing kicked off on Okeechobee earlier this year. Am I wrong on that?
No, you're dead. You're dead on, man. Like last year was, for several years it's been great, but last year was phenomenal. Like I only had one bomb and one mediocre bomb, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And I think I had 6 top 10s between the Opens, the Elites, and the Classic. And the last 3, the last 2 Elites, the last Open, top 10 to all of those. And the schedule, man. Okeechobee, I've done great there. Top 10 there a couple times. Seminole, I've won there. Top 10 there.
Eufaula?
Yeah, Eufaula.
Oh, you were jacked out of your gourd at Eufaula for that Open.
Oh, I was. I've won there. I've had a handful of, I think every time I've ever been there until now, I've top 10. And then like my home lake, Lake Murray, Santee, right down the road. I love the schedule. It really set up great for me. And, sometimes there's 4 types of tournaments for an individual. You have tournaments where you're just on a different level, where everything goes perfect, finding the right fish and nothing goes wrong. You have good tournaments where, kind of like I did at Lay Lake. You find the right fish and a couple things go wrong. Then you have tournaments where you find the right fish and nothing goes right. That's where I've been at all year. And then you have tournaments where just, you don't find anything and nothing goes right either. And I'm not going to keep go on and on and on about the way my year was, or has been so far until now. But it's, I mean, I was 101st in the points before Lay Lake, and it just looked like I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. And a lot of times I don't, but I typically put something together. But so many little things that have happened this year that's been a huge part of the reason that I've done so bad. Now, that being said, I'm not making excuses. I still should have had more to go on and more backups. But Santee, I missed the cut by 7 pounds. I catch one fish the day two. I break off an 8-pounder because I fought it so long. I had it on like 8-pound line, and it wasn't the line really. The line's fault. I fought it so long, and its teeth just rubbed a hole in my line, or not a hole, but rubbed my line.
Yeah.
But the one thing that really stands out so much is Seminole. One little bitty patch of pad stems. I have 9 bites on in practice, and I run to it day one, start on it, I thought, and I got to look, and I said, where's the two little reed heads that were beside it? And I looked, and they're about 75 yards down the bank. I said, well, I just fished my way to it. Well, Iconelli's on the other side of them, fishing towards them. Another angler pulls right in between us and cuts us both off. I say a few choice words to him. And in the meantime, Iconelli kicks it on high, pulls down for 3 days, makes the top 10.
Oh, no.
And I'm not saying Iconelli did anything by any means. He was actually there before I was. But I thought that I started on that place. I just, I'd made a long run to get there. When I get there, I see it, but I see the wrong one. So, I mean, that's just the way the years went. But we turned it around at Lay Lake. Hopefully we're going to keep it turned around, keep the train on the tracks. We go to probably the worst fishery in the country next. But, there's still going to be a winner. There's still going to be somebody finish second, and there's still going to be somebody finish last.
Have they been there since you were on the Elite Series?
Once, and it was not a great event.
They're talking about the Sabine or Sabine River, however you want to say it. The only good thing about that is, should you choose to go catch some flounder and redfish for dinner, that's a possibility. I remember one time I was there and Matt Reed was like, hey, come check this out. Just had a live well full of nice keeper redfish.
There's nothing good about that place at all. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's still, like I said, there's still going to be a winner. There's still going to be somebody finish last. And, we've got a job to do there, and we're going to go work hard, and hopefully we do it.
Ian says worse than the Three Rivers in Pittsburgh.
I've never been there, but it can't be a whole lot better.
That third, you mentioned the 4 types of tournaments. That third one, the one that you've been struggling with, where you find them and nothing works out. In my experience, whether it's a Wednesday night jackpot or a Bassmaster Open, that is the toughest one to overcome mentally, because you want to beat yourself up over it. You get angry over it, and you have the what coulda, shoulda, woulda been. Like, I can handle not finding them and being like, I got my ass kicked. I can handle decent execution going, man, I was 1 bite away from the top 10, but I still had a good tournament. But that third one where you find it and nothing goes right, I think that's what drives 95% of tournament anglers insane over the course of their life.
Yes, for sure. But at the same time, for me personally, I'm a little different. I'm weird. But for me personally, even if I have a bad tournament, and this is my job, I need to have good tournaments to provide a living for my family. But mentally, if I find it and it doesn't work out, at least I still feel like I'm doing the right things. So fishing wise, I still feel like I'm making the right decisions.
Okay.
But you're right. Yeah, it does definitely drive you crazy. And I got really down for a few days. I mean, and like, I finally just realized, it's going to be all right. Everybody goes through this, and And I got to thinking, and I'm not calling, I'm not throwing hate on anybody here, but, it's like Jason Christie finishes at the bottom a lot, but he wins a lot. Yeah. So, I got to think, it's like, hey, just because you finished at the bottom 4 times in a row, you may win. You can still win the next 4. And like I said, I'm definitely not bad mouthing Christie at all. I think anybody that does is an idiot, but, I'm
pretty much scared of the guy. So.
Because that's something that's literally, I thought about that. And, but yeah, you don't get to the elites by accident. I've been very fortunate to get there, and it's just been in a slump, but we're going to get through it.
I mean, it sounds like you're through it. I mean, you just finished 4th. You had a top 20 at the Bassmaster Classic, and it sounds like you're finding the fish and just stuff isn't going your way. So, like I said, there's a big difference. You would rather finish 80th, find them, and have everything go wrong than finish 80th, never find them, and feel like you're out in the Sahara Desert all tournament.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, because mentally, financially, you're not doing good, but mentally, you still know to an extent you're making the right decision. Yes, you should be making more right decisions, because you always need, the goal is to, no matter how bad everything turns out, you need something else good, something else to make it better. And yes, I found the fish and it didn't work, but I still didn't find enough.
I've always wanted to ask you about your style, run and gun, hit a million places. I mean, you're not a guy who's going to sit there and soak a worm every 5 feet for 3 hours and wait for him to get there. In my opinion, there's three factors that can impact someone's style. That's someone that they fish with, that they grew up fishing with or something. I know you and Thrift does a lot of that run and gun stuff. There's also location in the country where you're from, your blueback herring. A lot of times a fish follow the school follows the fish back in. You have to make it. And then there's also personality, just go people, or, hey, I'm just cool here. I feel like those are the 3 things that kind of impact your fishing style. Which would you say has impacted your fishing style the most?
I mean, I think probably all 3, running around with Thrift and, being where I'm from and just being very hyper, and all 3 of those together just amplify it that much more. But that being said, I have learned over the last 4 or 5 years I'm not going to say it's my style, but I can do it. One way I'm very comfortable fishing is if I find something good enough, whether it be an area or a single place, and just according to the way the fishery is fishing at that time. But just for instance, Lay Lake, it wasn't fishing that great. And I, on a river, I feel like release areas are more strong than anywhere else, any other type of fishery. Lay fishing, as tough as it was, I felt like that the release fish was very key, and I got in that area and I basically, yes, I was fishing fast, but I was fishing slow at the same time. I mean, literally that entire tournament, I fished a 1 mile stretch. I'd go up, I'd come down. I'd go up, I'd come down. Then I'd go down and I'd come up. But I was still doing it fast. Like I'd burn down the bank with a buzz bait or a chatterbait or a swim jig. I'd get to a dock. I'd skip a jig under the dock. And then I may run over there and throw a baby DD Little John or a shaky head on a little drop. And that's basically what I did. I was fishing fast in a small area and picking it apart.
Do you think that's, I'm thinking back to like 2010 to 2014 when Kevin Van Dam was popularizing the power finesse technique. We were watching him run all over every fishery he was at, make 5 casts, burn a crankbait back in, make another move. And it was interesting. Another angler was doing an interview and he said, man, he goes, Kevin's ruined more like local anglers' careers who try to emulate that, because he was fishing fast with a purpose. He was fishing fast effectively, I believe is the way I said it on yesterday's BTL. If you're trying to learn how to fish fast, how do you know you're not fishing overfish? How do you know you're actually covering that water thoroughly? And how do you kind of know that you're fishing fast effectively and not just burning water for the sake of burning water?
I think there's always different scenarios for whatever we're talking about. But for this instance, whether it's, let's just say one thing that I do when I am fishing fast and pull up, make 4 or 5 casts, go to the next place, it's typically an isolated target, whether that's a brush pile, whether that's a hard spot on a drop or a dock, or just one little shade line on a stretch of bank. Whatever that is, I think more so on the shallow stuff, like a shade line or a dock, the place that fish, the highest potential place for that fish to be sitting, whether it's current, you got to look at the current, the time of day, what's going on, is kind of the approach you look at. Like, I may pull up and fish that shade line, that 50-foot shade line on the bank, and at 12 o'clock in the day, I feel like that fish is probably there. He's probably going to, if a brim comes by, he'll probably eat it. So I may throw a topwater, a green pumpkin horny toad, or swim a brim colored jig and move on. And then I may go out there and fish a hard spot on a drop. Those fish probably eat a crawfish or a shad when it comes by. Throw my DD Little John over there, or drag a football jig, drag a shaky hit. So I think each situation, you got to look at it as what's the highest percentage, what's going to trigger that fish in that position, the best.
Okay. So you have to be able to read water and navigate it. So instead of fishing down the bank, you're reading the water. You're saying this is the highest percentage spot. You're putting your bait in that high percentage spot for active fish to eat it. And if there's none there, you'll move on to the next one. And then at that point, you're playing the numbers game.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's kind of 2 ways to look at it. Like let's just talk when it's tough. Like, one, you can slow down and pick everything apart. So you're going to get less opportunities, but maybe when you get that opportunity, it's a higher percentage of making it work.
Okay.
Or 2, you can speed up, get more opportunities at a lower percentage of actually making it work. So at the end of the day, sometimes it evens out. Sometimes one's better than the other. And you just kind of, but what really makes it work is when you find the little details. Just like, Lay Lake, a few of the little details that I found out on day 1 of the tournament that I didn't find in the practice was, we had water willow on the bank, and then there was cabbage grass out in front of it. Okay. Well, you could get a bite in the water willow, but the cabbage grass out in front of it was better. And if it was on the main river, it was even better. And if it was real close to a point on the main river, it was the best. Fast forward to the docks, that same day, docks on the river in the current, the docks that you didn't, when you skip your jig under there, that you didn't come back with moss or, just black crap on your jig. Those docks, that entire tournament, I never got a bite on. Well, I learned which docks had it and which docks didn't. So I would just erase the ones with it from my rotation. So that's just speeding me up that much more. And the whole deal with that is kind of a little off subject, but the whole deal with that, I think it was the reason it was on some docks and it was not on others. I think it was something to do with the current, whether it be like the clean ones, I feel like had more current on them than the ones that were not clean. And I think the current plus them being clean made them that much better than the others.
So what looks like haphazardly running down the bank, go ahead, is I mean, you just mentioned 15 factors on 2 different areas where you can just go dunk, 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 all the way down the river. And it looks like you're just randomly stopping at fish's stretches, but you've got key things on each stretch to put yourself in the best success.
Yeah, and I think to make it work, you're constantly adding to that list, adding to, like, starting out. I didn't know either one of those things the first day of that tournament. I just started in the area because it was the best shad spawn that I had. It was the closest shad spawn that I had, so I was going to get more time. Plus, it was a release area. That's why I started in the area. I actually had no intentions of staying in the area, but I knew I was going to start in it. And it, like, I caught 2.5, a 5, and a limit really quick. So that's kind of what forced me to stay there. And then I started picking up on those little details throughout the day, and really just added to it throughout the tournament. Adding the buzzbait in later on, and finding the brim bed later on the final day. And yeah, I think to cover water, to fish fast, efficiently, you're constantly learning. You're constantly adding to your pile of knowledge for that game plan. Every stop, you're adding something to it.
That's such good stuff. I don't think you realize how good that was. That's educational for everybody listening to it, because in some form or fashion, it might be different factors. It might be different cover. It might be something different, but you can apply that to your fishing.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's not just one deal. But I mean, really, I fish basically two ways. What we were just talking about, and then getting in a place and making it my home. And I've done really well both ways. And, it's just however it sets up. And really, Lay Lake, I did both of them, which was kind of a unique scenario. I mean, I got in an area and I made it my home, but I was moving around a lot at the same time.
I am firmly in belief now, having fished several fisheries in Virginia and now several fisheries in the Carolinas and then that northern Alabama area, that part of the country that you come from, produces the most well-rounded anglers. And if you look at the numbers and the number of top-level anglers on the BPT and the Elite Series from your neck of the woods, dude, it's got everything you need. Highly, I don't want to say it's like underrated, but when you typically think of East Texas, Alabama, Florida, that part of the country that you're from, creates such well-rounded, talented anglers that can figure it out under so many different circumstances with different bait, different vegetations, different types of fisheries, different species of bass. You guys literally have it all.
The only thing we don't have is Tennessee River ledges, but
you're not that far away from it.
No, we're really not. And the way we travel now, like, we're pretty close. So, yeah. And I think another reason, and maybe people don't realize this, but to me personally, and me and Thrift talked about this several times, I think one reason that just junk fishing and figuring stuff out works so good for the guys in our region, is the fishing sucks a lot of times. Now that I'm in South Carolina, which you can still call the same region, I didn't really grow up fishing these South Carolina lakes like I did the North Carolina, but yes, we have some great lakes, but the fishing sucks a lot of times. So you just have to make chicken salad out of chicken crap a lot of times.
Yeah.
And, I really do. Like Lake Norman's a phenomenal lake.
I love that place.
Big bags there, but it's not always easy to catch the good ones. You can go and pretty much always catch plenty of fish. But the lake I grew up on, Lake Wiley, back in the day, it was phenomenal. I mean, stupid good. Well, now it's stupid bad. And I mean, if you can compete on that lake, you can compete a lot of different places. And I think it makes you mentally strong as well, because, like, I didn't realize it until, or it didn't dawn on me. I guess I realized it, but I never really thought much about it. I would used to fish the 2-day BFL in the fall every year on Lake Wiley. I fished it. I think I never missed the top 10 in it. And I'm fishing for 5 to 7 bites a day. and know that I'm going to get those opportunities, and you just have to capitalize on them when you do. Well, most places you don't fish for 5 to 7 bites a day. I mean, you catch 10, 15, 20 fish a day, and at the end of the day, you have a decent bag. Well, growing up fishing for those 5 to 7 bites, it makes you mentally tough, and no matter how many wrong decisions you make, you know the next one's going to be right, and then when it's wrong, you know the next one's going to be right, and eventually it is.
Holy cow! I just pulled this up. You have 44 top 10s with MLF.
Well, FLW.
FLW.
You call it what you want to.
44 top 10s?
I guess, if that's what it says.
That's what it says.
Well, I guess it was 44.
That's a lot, dude.
I mean, a lot of those are co-anglers.
Yeah, but it's still a top 10. That's still freaking.
Yeah.
It's a lot of checks cashed.
I like cashing checks.
Yeah. Last question on that. Has there ever been a bait for covering water, finding a pattern, discover it better than a chatterbait, or is it the end all be all for everything you just talked about? Can you ever go wrong when you're trying to figure something out by tying on a chatterbait?
So I don't think we can ever say never, because you don't know. I mean, I'm one of the biggest bait tinkers there is. I just don't see anybody ever being able to make I've never been able to make anything chatterbait style better than a Z-Man chatterbait. There's a lot of people that try, but in my opinion, and I have absolutely no affiliation with Z-Man whatsoever, but they are the king of the chatterbait. They did it right. Ron Davis made that thing, and he did it right. That being said, I absolutely love a chatterbait. I've got 6 boxes, 3,700 boxes of them.
Really?
I throw it a lot. But I don't like it in clear water. I know it works. People catch on it in clear water. And when I say clear, I'm talking like pretty dang clear. Yeah. Now, you give me a little wind, you give me some overcast, you give me some stain, if you give me all of those together, or tannic water, like Florida, Santee, those situations, grass, that's a little different. But like just, I don't know, say Lake Norman.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not going to go throw a chatterbait when it's slick, calm, bluebird skies and 90 degrees in the clear water. There are definitely other baits that would do the same thing that I think are more effective in those situations. Whether it's a swim bait or a swim jig, which is basically a swim jig is a chatterbait that's just more subtle. I think in those situations, there's probably better tools than a chatterbait, but I do not leave the dock without a chatterbait.
6 boxes of chatterbaits?
Yep. So I've got a 3/8 box, a half-ounce box, a 3/4 and an ounce and a quarter, a red, a small blade, and a big blade.
That's 7. You got 7 boxes.
I got a lot of them.
Okay. I know that 3/4 and the ounce and a quarter has been out a couple years now. Is that an underutilized bait? Every time I throw it, I'm like, dude, this thing is freaking awesome. I just don't fish. I mean, you don't hear a lot about it. You still hear a lot about the half-ounce. Is that still a cat that's in the bag, so to speak?
To an extent. It's just, I think the biggest thing is just, it's a more unique situation. It's just something that's a more specific, a specific situation when you need that tool. I mean, it's a great tool, but it's not as versatile as a half or a 3/8.
Look at that right there.
Yep.
That is that still says the one and only chatterbait, Bryan Thrift, winner of the Southeast Strand Series, Lake Okeechobee, using it. This still has the Elastec skirt in it. It is still owned by Rad Lures at this point, with Z-Man making the blade on it.
Yep.
That's in the package. That's not the original, but that's the next one after the original.
Yep. That's when Thrift made it famous. That's what it went to, and it was the same thing other than the hook, basically. But yeah, and you know, nowadays the only thing that's changed to make it even better is the jackhammer. I mean,
yep.
It's just everything is just more quality. You know, there was nothing wrong with the original chatterbait. It's just a JDM version. I mean, everything's better. The hook, the skirt, everything hand tied. Yeah, chatterbait, bad dude.
All right, we're going to take our final break of the show. I see some questions. Steven has a question there. Throw some questions in. Like I said, I'm giving away 6 packs of Stealth Invaders to, I guess we can kind of agree on, like, you say, hey, that was a really good question, and we'll give it away to them. But get your questions in during the break. When we come back, we'll hit you rapid fire for about 10 more minutes, and then we'll let you get on your way. You good with that?
Let's roll.
All right, BTL on a Tuesday. Bryan New will be back right after this. Have you considered purchasing new electronics for your rig? The type of mounts you choose to protect your investment should be part of the decision-making process. No matter if you prefer 1, 2, or 3 graphs up front, Beatdown Outdoors has a solution for you. Adjustable, versatile, rigid, and made in the USA. What's your ultimate electronic setup? Check out the full selection of Beatdown Outdoors products by visiting beatdownoutdoors.com.
The great thing about the new Sensation soft plastics from Big Bite Baits, heavily scented, super soft, buoyant, comes in 7 great new shapes. I've got a couple of them of my signature series, the cliffhanger worm and the ramtail craw. Great for a flipping jig, football jig, swim jig, all that. Several other great shapes. Really excited about it. We've worked over the last year, catches fish all over the country, and I think it's going to catch fish for people everywhere you try it.
The Spro Little John crankbait has been around for almost 15 years, and it is one of my go-to crankbaits whenever I need a fish in the boat, so you can never have enough new colors. That's why Spro's coming out with a handful of new colors, including Pearl Shad, which has this bleached out white look, but it's got this pearlescent, really, really pretty. We've got Copper Shad, which looks amazing in the water. It's got that purple flake on the back, really, really pops in the water. And then if you want some real pop, we've got Sparkle Shad, nothing but sparkles all over this thing. And then last but not least, we've got the matte Sexy Shad, just a really different looking color for a crankbait. So you want to give them a little different look, that matte Sexy Shad is definitely the one to go with. All these colors are available in the original Little John and the MD.
I'm the kind of guy that never leaves the house without a pocket knife, and Gamakatsu's come out with the EDC series of knives. EDC stands for everyday carry, so whether you're on the water or off, you can always have it with you. The best thing about it to me is that assisted open feature. With this D2 blade, you've got it right here at your fingertips, so if you can't find your scissors, you need to cut a knot, you need to cut your braid, you've always got it. Make sure you check it out. Never leave home without your Gamakatsu EDC knife.
Born in Japan, using technology, innovation, and precision, Sunline produces the widest selection of fishing lines at the most technologically advanced line factory in the world. Manufactured at the strictest tolerances to produce victories at the highest levels of tournament bass fishing. From household names like Christie, Swindle, and Cruz, to young guns like Cook, Logan, New, and Welcher, they all trust Sunline to take them to the top of the leaderboard. Choose the line that will give you the strength to guarantee your confidence. Sunline.
Having confidence in your tackle while on the water is one of the main things to success, in my opinion. In the last couple of years with Denali, I've had just that. From anything from spinning rods, casting rods, tungsten products, even now to casting and spinning reels, I have the confidence to go out there and get the job done and know that all my equipment is going to handle it and do it just the way I want it. The thing about Denali is you've got great quality products at a great price point, so make sure you check them out.
All right, welcome back. BTL on a Tuesday. Chat with Bryan New. Get your questions in for a chance to win some X Zone. And then today at noon, Jacob Wheeler, fresh off of his 6th BPT victory, will be on for a BTL at lunch. So join us for lunch. And then tomorrow, I'm dead serious. I did not think this show was going to happen. Ben Milliken comes on to talk about Wheeler Lake. No, it's not manufactured. Yes, I am a little nervous about how it's going to go down, but we agreed to be transparent and to talk about this stuff. And we had, like I said, we had a little bit of dust up, but we're going to work through it, and we're going to work through a lot of it live on air. I respect the hell out of Ben. I always have. That's why I've added him. I think he has added a tremendous amount to BTL in his appearances, his breakdown of each show, and then also bringing new people into the sport through his followers, the way he has chronicled that, his dedication to it. Like I said, nothing but respect for Ben, and also respect for Ben, especially out of the later stages of how he handled it. Like I said, it's a deal where I think I'm right, he thinks he's right, and we're just going to put it out there because it's something that goes down every single derby. And I'm not trying to get you in the middle of this, Bryan, but it's something that goes down every single derby on TVA fisheries in May when you're dealing with 100 to 300 boats.
Yeah, it does for sure. And I don't know if we really want to get too much into it. I'm perfectly okay with it, but I'll say this. Just because somebody wasn't somewhere the first day doesn't mean they showed up there the second day because they think or know somebody called them there. Your boat draw has a big deal to do with it. You know, if you're a later number, you know you might not be able to get on a place. You run towards it, see boats on it, and you keep on going. But also, you never know what, you know, maybe somebody was saving a place for the next day, or maybe somebody learned this on the first day or earlier today, and they're just going and say, oh, this place sets up like that, and they wind up there. Mm-hmm. It's not always somebody fishes a place because they think somebody called them there the day before.
That does happen though too.
Absolutely. Yeah. People definitely show up because they see somebody catch fish there at that moment or the day before. It definitely happens. And typically those guys are down there where I've been all year. Typically.
I hear you.
Most of the time the guys that are up on top, they don't do that.
So looking forward to Ben on Wednesday. We'll also be giving away a Denali Novus Pro reel. Denali just came out with their reels on the 15th. So I'm Santa Claus over here, just giving away all sorts of stuff. Hadn't done a giveaway for a while. And then I don't like to do the like, comment, share stuff because that's how you end up with bots. And then you have fake accounts and all that. So I just give it away to listeners and viewers in the comments.
Yeah.
Speaking of questions, good questions for Bryan New. You get called that.
Our bank accounts. You can link our bank account.
No, dude, I was looking at it. You've done well. Yeah, he did win heavy hitters. That's the six figure. But even though you've been sucking by your own admission, I mean, you still done like 40K this year, and then you ended last year. I mean, dude, listen to this. This is from Lake Fork on. These are consecutive tournaments for you. 19, 10, 2,500, 17,000, 20,000, 14, 9, and 2,500. That's every time you launch your boat like that. I mean, this is all you've wanted to ever do, right?
Pretty much.
That's gotta be cool to freaking get checks like that every single time you launch your boat for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 tournaments in a row, all in the span of 3 months.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, but also kind of getting back to, I think one reason the way my year went the way it was is like I started taking it for granted. And not really, like, I was doing so good for so long. I just was taking it for granted. I wasn't really appreciating it. Like, now I appreciated it, but I don't know.
I got conditioned to it, expected it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't mean that in any arrogant way whatsoever. You'll never see me be arrogant. I don't think if you do, you need to punch me in the mouth because I don't like that whatsoever. I don't care who you are or what you've done. You have no right to be arrogant at all. But yeah, I mean, I got woke up, I got brought back to reality, and so that's that. But hopefully we can get back on a run like that and not take it for granted.
I hear you. All right, ready for rapid fire?
Rapid it.
And if one sticks out to you, let me know. M Dunn 84. Can you go over your shaky head setup that you used at Lay?
Yeah. So I've always threw a shaky head a lot, but I pretty much threw it on a spinning rod. Well, me and Luke Clausen fished a little bit at Clark's Hill earlier in the year, and And he was throwing a shaky head on a bait caster with, a fatter worm, a little bit heavier worm. And I really started liking it. So I started throwing a Zoom Magnum finesse worm, which is slim, like it's kind of a Cinco style or a Zlinky style worm, but it doesn't have the salt, but it's heavier. I think it's like right around 5 inches. And I was just putting that on an 1/8 ounce greenfish tackle cleanup shaky head. And 16-pound sunline shooter now. 16 on a shaky head with a light bait caster. I think it's a 610 Century arc rod, and then a 7-to-1 arc G7 reel. Yeah. I mean, you're able to. I'm actually able to skip it pretty good. I can cast it really far, and having that heavier worm allows me to do that. And just with the bait caster, you have more power, bigger line. You can jerk on them a lot harder. You can winch them in a lot faster. But one of the key deals is something I started doing this year, and it is a company that I've, partnered with this year, but like truly believe in it, is the Floatzilla. It's a little, and at first I was like, yeah, this is kind of gimmicky, but it's actually legit, man. Like in a lot of situations, it's just a little piece of plastic, more or less, that's, you screw on the end of your worm, cut it off to make it flat. You can do a lot of different things with it. It's not just for worms, but that's where I like it the best, is a straight tail worm. So I was cutting the end of my fat finesse worm, Magnum finesse worm, just cutting it off to where it would match up perfectly. And when it's sitting down there on the bottom, instead of laying down or just the worm slightly standing up, it will actually stand up pretty high. And that's something I've believed in for years. I actually started using hand-poured worms a lot, to make that worm stand up. Me and my wife, Brittany, were fishing a tournament at Baden Lake in North Carolina, a little small lake. And I had been throwing a monster worm on a Texas rig, and I had her I don't remember, it was a straight tail worm that floated. I don't remember exactly what it was. But I never got a bite. She caught a 5-pounder and several more fish. And like, that's when the whole floating deal really dawned on me. So I rigged up, a hand-poured straight tail worm that floated, and I caught a 5-pounder. And ever since then, actually go on that same year, I won the regional at Seminole, and I caught several fish on a worm that was hand poured that would float. So with the Floatzilla, you're able to do that with basically any plastic.
I kind of showed a video from the Floatzilla. It was a very infomercial like, but you still got the idea of what it was.
Yeah, like. I mean, it's definitely legit for sure. And they have different models. They have.
It does look goofy as hell, though, dude.
It does, but it's legit. Like I agree. When I first seen it, I was like, yeah, maybe not. But I got to using it, and actually. In Florida this year, me and Schmidt, we kind of went a few days early and went to some smaller lakes and just fun fishing. And like I was flipping pads with a Zoom Slinky with the Floatzilla. Schmitty was behind me flipping pads with a stick style bait without it. And I started catching several, and he wasn't catching any. Now I was in front of him, but then we swapped. He got in the front and I got in the back, and I was still catching more. Then we flipped. He put it on. I took it off. He got more bites. It definitely gets more bites for sure in certain situations, a lot of situations.
There you go. Bryan New is probably one of the best to answer this question from Kyle Collins. He said, I just registered for my first BFL as a co. I know the basics, like giving gas money, only casting back 180. What's your best advice for a first-time co-angler?
This is blunt, but it's real. Just knowing your place. Understanding that the guy in the front of the boat, he didn't pay his entry fee and he didn't buy his boat and practice to take you on a guide trip. That being said, maybe he hopes you do good, but he's there for him. So if you get to pushing him and trying to, and like you said, I think you already know that by saying the back 180 and this and that. So that's my number one advice for any co-angler. But you already knowing that, I've got to come up with something else. Just being versatile. I think, you never know what situation you're going to be in. You never know where you're going next. And the biggest thing is fish for a different fish. If he's skipping a jig under a dock, don't try to skip a jig under a dock unless you can skip and put it in places that he can't. Maybe throw a wacky worm or shaky head with a floatzilla on the back, or maybe even throw out in the middle. Like I weighed in so many fish as a co-angler throwing out in the middle, catching those pre-live scope fish that everybody's catching now. Maybe I wasn't knowing that I was throwing out a fish, but at some point during the day, I was going to throw out a fish and catch those fish that are not getting fished for. So number one advice, know your place, be respectful. Number two, if you already know that, fish for a different fish.
Your tagline or hashtag is #Don'tSuck. What do you do mentally when it seems like nothing is working and sucking is the only thing that takes place? Is that hat available for purchase?
No, I haven't.
It's not?
We need to make some. We did a little run last year, and we have full intentions of doing it again. We just got a lot going on with
Jordan Lee's paying for his kids' college tuition with This Lake Sucks shirts.
Yeah. Well, we got a baby on the way. We don't have a whole lot of free time. So we need to do
You got to get that set up with the Don't Suck shirts.
Yeah.
And hats.
Yeah. I mean, we sold a bunch of them last year. It's just, I guess we need to do it again.
All right. What do you mentally do when it seems like nothing is working and sucking is the only thing taking place?
That happens a lot, especially in 2023. And you just keep going. You do everything you can to not get down. It's very easy to get down, but just know that, eventually it's going to turn around. Whether we're talking this day, this tournament day, it's constantly sucking. Know in that moment that eventually today it's going to turn around. A lot of times it doesn't, but just know, because mentally, if you're not mentally in the game, you're not in the game. You're just there. You're not participating. You're just there. But for me, all year was sucking. I knew eventually I was going to get out of it. I mean, maybe I got out of it briefly. Maybe I get back in it, but hopefully I just got out of it in general. Just, you got to stay positive. You got to keep your mentality up, and you got to try hard to not let it get you down. And it's very easy to get you down, but when you're down, you're down. You got to get back up. Keep swinging.
You know what I like to tell my co-anglers?
There's no telling.
I said you can't catch them in the last 20 minutes if you don't catch them for the first 7 hours and 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, how many times have you heard that? I rolled up, I caught them all in the last half hour. Well, that means for the first 7 hours and 30 minutes, you went, what the hell is going on?
Oh, yeah.
And you can't do that unless you, like you say, suck.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you just got to keep going.
Good question here from Nick. How much scent do you run during a tourney? Do you pre-soak your baits, etc.?
So I've been a big believer in scent for years. I've used several different things, and once again, this is a sponsor plug, but it's legit. You can go back and watch the live at Lake Fork last year. You can watch it at Mississippi River, and you can watch it at Lay Lake. The bait fuel is legit. If you want to call it a scent, if you want to call it an additive, we can't smell it. So I don't know if you want to call it a scent, but it is bait fuel, and it fuels your bait. I'll just say this. At Lay Lake, and this is the third time, specific situations that I know for 100% fact that it made a difference.
Okay.
But we don't have enough time to go over all of them. So Lay Lake, day 4, I stumble across a brim bed. Well, the brim bed's under my feet when I stumble across it. I didn't realize it. There's at least 15 bass swimming around. I said, holy crap, I've ruined it. So I go ahead, I fish the pocket. I come back about 30 minutes later. I throw a 5-inch wacky slinky over there. Nothing. I cut an inch off of it, make it a 4-inch wacky slinky. Nothing. And I'm talking several casts with each. I sat down. I put bait fuel on my bait. First cast, I caught one. Coincidence? Maybe, maybe not. All right. I fished a little bit more. Nothing. I fished the dock beside it. I lost one. Pulled back over there. Nothing. Reapplied bait fuel. First cast. I caught 4 fish off that brim bed the first cast after I put bait fuel on my bait that day, and had the biggest bag of the tournament. And like without a doubt, those fish bit because of bait fuel. One time's maybe a coincidence. 4 times in a row, it's definitely not. And that's Lay Lake, Fork, Mississippi River. It happened to Thrift the exact same way. It makes a difference. I don't pre-soak it. I don't like the way that the bait fuel, what it does to your bait, pre-soaking it. You have to reapply it a lot because it is water-based. It doesn't last a long time. But, I put my bait on, whatever it is. This situation was linky. And I just put a little bit in my fingers. I just rub it on, and I cast it out there. Maybe 10 casts, you need to reapply it again. Am I going to reapply it every 10 casts throughout the day? No. But when I know I'm throwing out a fish and it's not biting, I'm going to put it on 100%.
Good stuff. Chris would like to know, when you fish with Thrift, did you try to copy the techniques or did you focus on your own game?
During practice, when we were practicing, we tried to figure the lake out. We worked together as a team, and definitely not copying whatsoever. Like we would never throw the same bait. Never, ever, ever throw the same bait at the same time. If we found a school of fish, we would try to find out every bait that they would bite and which one worked better, after they were pressured, which one would get a bigger bite. And not only did that help him in the tournament, it helped me as well. Even though I'm fishing as a co-angler, by doing so, I would know how to get a bigger bite. I would know how to get more bites. That's the approach we took, and it worked for both of us.
All right. Jeremy would like to know, are there any tweaks or modifications that you do to your chatterbait? And as we get into the summer months, what's the trailer that you're putting on that sucker?
So the only tweak that I would ever do to a chatterbait, there's 2 tweaks really. Sometimes trimming the skirt to make it a little shorter. Sometimes cutting the inside of the skirt out, if that makes sense, to make it less bulky. And that does a few different things. One, you can fish it deeper. It has less drag. Really, that's the biggest deal. It has less drag. You can fish it deeper. And 2, trailers. I basically use 3 trailers. I use a Zoom Super Fluke. Now I'm talking full-size chatterbait. Yep. Sometimes you go to like the Mini Max or something. Basically the same thing, but smaller sizes. But the jackhammer, a Zoom Super Fluke, Z-Crawl or a Z-Crawl Junior, sometimes like this, sometimes like this. If I want, and basically those 3, it's 2 baits, but you can call it 3 because one's 2 different ways. The Fluke is for faster and or deeper. The Z-Crawl is for shallower and or slower. This Z-Crawl like this, flat, that's the slowest, the shallowest. Z-Crawl like this, that's kind of in between a Fluke and the flat Z-Crawl. And plus, when it's sideways like this, it's got more like a brim tail look, shad tail look to it. And then the third trailer is a bait that's not on the market yet from Zoom that we've been working on. Oh, it is a Fluke style bait, no boot tail. But yeah, it's going to be good. It's not quite right yet. We've got a lot of stuff left to do to it, but been playing with it, and it is a good bait.
All right, couple more questions, Bryan. Clay would like to know, what's your favorite stick bait? I don't know whether he's stick bait, I guess. Soft, hard, either way.
Yeah, there's a lot of great ones on the market. I'm going to say Cinco style bait's what he's meaning.
Yep.
And I like the Zoom's Linky. The Cinco is great. There's a lot of great ones. I use a lot of Zoom stuff. I use other stuff as well, but I like the Zlinky. I won my first elite I ever fished with a Zoom Zlinky, and I won a lot of money on that bait. And they make some really good colors that you can't get in other brands. To me, that's kind of what makes it stand out a little bit more than others.
Good stuff. And then Mark would like to know, is your new baby going to be named after a fishery or have something to do with fishing?
No.
Ryder, he's not riding a boat.
Brittany said his middle name's gonna be Ryder, so he could ride on a boat. I don't really think that's naming him after anything fishing, but
yeah. All right, last question, and I think this one might be the winner. Let me know what you think. You can go as in depth or shallow as you want, but Captain Lawson, hell of a name there, says, "How do you go about breaking down a lake that you're very familiar with without being distracted by the history you have on that lake?"
I mean that's probably the winner there. That's
okay.
That's a good...
Captain Lawson. Send me an email, matt@basszone.com with your contact info, and I will send you 6 of the X Zone Stealth Invaders. Hope you like smallmouth fishing.
Everyone loves smallmouth
Back
fishing.
to the I know, right? Back to the question.
You know, that's a hard thing to do, and I think it kind of somewhat goes back to just saying, you know, just fishing free. You know, forget about what happened yesterday. Forget about what happened 30 minutes ago, and just fish free. I think you can definitely have an advantage fishing on your home lake or lake you're very familiar with. But when you fish free, you don't get all of these, you know, okay, this is what I need to be doing. When you figure out the deal, that's when the advantage comes in, because whatever the deal is, you know 100 places that set up for that specific deal. That's the advantage that's the advantage you have when you know a fishery really well, or your home fishery, but you have to use that advantage correctly. So that's where I would go with that.
That's good stuff. You broke that down. Do you have one of those swim baits that I seen you talking about, the herring swim bait? You did? I do. I told you to get that for the show, and we just never ended up going down that path. You're proud of that sucker.
I am. I got a few of them here. I don't know if you can see them.
Hold on. I got an opportunity here. I'll go big screen for you. Hold that sucker up in front of the big screen.
So I'm not going to hold them all up, but it's the new Spro Sashimi. You know, it's a swimmer style bait. We know the magic swimmer. You know, it's a big deal on the herring lakes. Well, you know, I'm a herring guy now. I live on Lake Murray, or right by Lake Murray. And you know, that's a big deal. So the deal with a 2-joint, a 3-piece bait, it swims like this, but it's
snake
wide.
Serpentine.
Yes, it's wide. So I got to playing around. I said, what if we put a 3rd joint, make it a 4-piece bait, and it tightens it up a lot. You know, instead of swimming like this, it swims more like this. And it's a lot more natural. A heron doesn't swim like this. A heron swims really tight. And, man, the Spro Sashimi swimmer, it's not available yet. I think we're going to release it at ICAST.
Are you allowed to hold it up? Hold it up again.
Well, I just did. I don't know if I'm allowed.
Hold it up again.
We're going to have 10 awesome colors to start out with. That's the chrome. It's kind of flashes in the light there. It's
very nice.
See that very
just kind of angle it out. Put your hand behind. There you go.
Yep.
And there's 1, 2, 3, 4 joints to it, which is what makes it tighter.
Well, it's 3 joints, 4 pieces.
Okay.
This color might show up better.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You can turn the light down.
Slow sync, fast sync, all that, and then it's got the Spro eye in it and all the good stuff.
Yeah, it's a slower sink bait. You know, it's a fast bait. You fish it pretty fast. You can fish it slower as well, but it's keeping it up there, you know, from the surface to, you know, a foot deep to the surface is kind of where you're going to fish it. And this bait is going to be awesome on the cane piles. I've already, the herring spawn, not necessarily cane piles, already call them really well. Now, the prototype versions that I had last fall, I absolutely destroyed them at Lake Murray over the cane piles, and it was really cool. You could go over them and fish right behind guys, and you can literally watch the fish on the live scope. And where I really figured out that this thing is the deal was I pulled up on a cane pile. I see 3 fish sitting in top of it with live scope. I threw a walking bait over it. They didn't move. I threw a fluke over it. They didn't move. I threw the sashimi over it. All 3 of them bulldog up there. I catch one, throw back, catch another one. And by that time, the third one that was there, you know, he was boogered up.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized that how big of a deal this bait was at that point, and I just kept on. And you know, I really caught him really good that day, and a lot ever since. And definitely good around the herring spawn, but the cane pile deal for herring fishing is where this bait really, really shines. It's going to be good just going down the bank as well. You know, kind of. I'm not going to say this is the chatterbait replacement by any means because it's completely different, but
good for covering
going back to what we were saying, like I'll go down the bank when the water's stained or cloudy or windy with a chatterbait. But whenever it's slick, sunny, calm, all of the above or one or the other, this is a style of bait that I would use. I'm not saying it's the best, but it definitely is a style of bait that I would use, and a bait that I have used a lot in that situation. Going back to the triple trout, you know, I would throw a triple trout in those situations for years. And this bait's it's going to be a better profile. You know, it's not real big. It's going to be really good for those situations as well. And I think it's going to be good for smallmouth also. So, like, I actually made a few smallmouth colors in it. We're going to have a translucent perch.
Yeah, that looks sexy.
Yep.
Yeah, that'll last 3 casts before it's down a pike's gullet.
Yeah. So you might catch
that's like an LG bone color.
Yeah. You got the chartreuse bottom. That's going to be a spot killer too. But
yeah,
I made those 2 colors because I'm really excited to go throw that for smallmouth. And then we got, you know, it's going to be 2 sizes. 125 and I think it's a 100 or 95.
For guys, when you see the numbers, obviously you know the bigger number, the bigger the bait, but what that actually is its length in millimeters, metric system. So the 125 is 125, the length of the body, millimeters. The 100 is 100 millimeters.
It's actually 105. So
105.
You just got to read the back. It tells you.
Okay. I'm not very good on my metric to inches conversion. So what, like a 5 and a 6 inch?
No. I don't know, 105 millimeters. It's
105 millimeters. What is it? About a 4.5 inch bait, the small one?
About the 105 is about 4, and the 125 is just a little over 5. It looks like. I should probably know more about it than that, but I know they're the right sizes. I can tell you that.
I was proud of myself that I knew that the number after was how long it was in millimeters.
You did good in that.
Yeah, that's with a lot of the baits across there. So what else you got before I let you go? Like I said, I've kept you for almost an hour and a half, and I greatly appreciate it. I've learned a lot this show.
Man, I could sit and talk about fishing all day long, but
I know.
Yeah, I've got a lot to get done for the Sabine River. Yeah, that's, like I said, it's a gar hole of a fishery, but there's gonna be a winner, and there's gonna be a last place, and there's gonna be a bass tournament. Gonna be a big crowd, but I got to go get prepared for it. Got a lot to do this week, and basically got today and Thursday to get everything rigged up. Get that Falcon and Yamaha cleaned up. My pregnant wife says she can't clean it as good as much she could pre-pregnancy. I guess I got it on myself.
Hey, I roomed with a guy at the last Open at Toledo Bed, Justin Phillips. He's probably going to win the next Open on Eufaula in Oklahoma. OCD. He's like, hey, man, while you're working on tackle, do you mind if I detail your boat? And I started laughing. No, he was dead serious. He just didn't like the fact that it was best. He brought out the spray, sprayed it down, washed it down, cleaned everything out of it. I had my tackle done, had a clean boat. I was like, dude, you could room with us anytime.
Absolutely. So my wife, Brittany, she's awesome. She does so much for our business and for me and just our family, but I'm very anal. I like my stuff to be clean and neat, and more so neat than clean, you know, because I can deal with it being dirty, but
you gotta know where everything is.
Much for me. She, you know, obviously she's pregnant, so she has to take it a little easier now, but she cleans my boat before every tournament. Like when we're at home, she always washed my boat for me. I would help a little bit, but and my truck, clean inside and out. And at the Elites, you know, she wipes my boat down, keeps it looking good every day, keeps that Yamaha shiny. And I mean, she even puts sunscreen on me every morning before blast off. That way I don't have sunscreen on my hands. She's pretty awesome. She's also
I'm terrified of that because
but
isn't
even
that
if she's
deal?
not sitting right here, I'd be talking good about her.
That sunscreen scares me. Like you put it on your leg and then you sit down and then you touch your thigh in the shorts to your hands, and now you've got that thing on the sunscreen. And I've read that book, but it was by the dude who created Power Bait, that's saying they don't care about tobacco or gasoline, but whatever's in sunscreen they have an aversion to. So now I'm scared to touch it. That the sunscreen freaks me out. But then you also like don't want to die, so it's important to put it on.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to die. I mean, I'm going to one day, but
but you know what I mean. But I don't know the proper way to put sunscreen on without freaking out and being like, I'm not getting bit because of this sunscreen.
You got to get your woman there for blast off every morning.
I know. Have you ever had that co-angler who just opens up the spray bottle of Banana Boat and just starts going,
sprays it everywhere,
and you're just watching your baits on the front deck get coated by it? You're like, I'm like covering them like a hawk that just caught a rat, going, no, don't touch the plastic.
Right. Yeah. I've got plenty of co-angler stories. I don't know that we have time for that. But
hey, I'll let you go on this. There was one suggestion, Mark. I kind of like the name of it. Baby name St. John has a special meaning to you. St. John Ryder New. If that isn't destined for destined for greatness, I don't know what is.
Oh, it definitely fits for sure. For sure. It would definitely be a good one. But yeah, we've already got our mind made up. Definitely some meaning behind it. And I guess I'm going to go rig up some rods.
When are you going to be? When's the baby due?
August 7th, which is, that's the due date. I hope that is the actual date because it's 7 days after the last day of the St. Clair tournament.
Oh, wow. You freaking out yet?
And roughly, no, it's more than 3.
It's 3 days before New York, before we leave from New York.
I swear it's more than that. But Brittany says it's 3 days before we go to Champlain.
It's a tight window is what you're trying to say.
Very tight window. But here's the deal. There's always more bass tournaments.
Yeah.
I'm not missing my boy's birth. I don't want to miss the Elite this year, but I may do it.
You freaking out yet? You excited? I mean,
I'm definitely excited. Like I'm on cloud 9. I'm not freaking out.
Yeah.
I may when I see that head pop out, but this is we've got a beautiful daughter. Unfortunately, I didn't create her, but she's still my daughter, and I love her like I did. But this is the first one I made. It's the first birth I'm gonna be a part of. As far as I'm concerned, it's gonna be the only one. But Brittany says maybe not.
What is it? August 7th. You're gonna have to lay off the Red Bulls on August 6th and 7th, Bryan.
I typically don't drink them now. I will when I'm fishing.
I got him. I don't drink them as much anymore.
She got me where I don't drink them as much anymore.
Yes. I try to do the same thing.
Yeah.
I try to stay off of them, but then it's like it's in the morning. Like it's like I like the peach Red Bull in the morning.
Mm-hmm. I can't do the peach, but I got.
You can't do the peach. Have you tried it?
I don't do peach.
They made peach.
They make like a peach nectarine. It's freaking unbelievable.
Like straight up regular.
I don't like the smell.
Whatever
of it.
It is.
It smells like medicine.
It's like
it does have a weird smell to it.
No, so the only reason I'm drinking today is like I didn't wear my CPAP. I got sleep apnea and I didn't wear it the last 2 nights because it was almost 3:00 in the morning when I got home 2 nights ago. And then last night we had a busy day yesterday and I just never set my CPAP up. So a little dragging today. So I got to get my wings.
All right. Go out, get your stuff ready for this Sabine. I've been informed by the locals that it is a soft day, the Sabine River. Bring your long needle nose for the gar and the mudfish and the flounder and the redfish and go find yourself 13 pounds a day and get another dub.
Win by like 12.
Who knows?
Yep. So,
all right. Bryan, I appreciate it, dude. That was badass.
You stay out of trouble tomorrow. Yep.
I will.
You need me to send you my Gamakatsu knife for protection.
I laugh every time I see Michael Neal's commercial where he's like, I never leave without my Gamakatsu knife. He's like, shoo. You have one of those? I've never seen one in person. Hold on.
Yeah. Right here it is.
Hold on.
I never leave home without it either. So I never carried a knife ever because I didn't really want to buy one because I'm a cheap wad.
Yeah,
but
you're sponsored by Gamakatsu.
Yeah, so now I did get a free one, but it's really sweet. Like I realized how much I've been missing by not having a nice knife all these years. I got my line hung up under a dock, and I couldn't get my bait, so I just pulled out instead of going back to the back of the boat and get my scissors, I just
hold that EDC, that everyday carry Gamakatsu up again, so we could see that in the screen. Hold it up again. That is pretty slick.
It is. It's got the carbon fiber. Woo! It's good looking and it's sharp. And don't mess with me, cause I got a knife,
a sponsored knife. Coming at you with that Gamakatsu EWC or EDC.
Mm-hmm. All right, Matt. Stay out
Thanks,
of trouble.
Bryan New. We'll do.
Right. Always
See
fun.
ya.
See you, bud.
All right, later. All right, that was Bryan New, one of the most naturally talented anglers in the game doing it, and he's got a lot more years to do it, so we will see him in the winter. So we saw him in the winter circle in the very first event he fished, then he won one like a little bit later, so I'm sure we will see him in the winter circle for literally decades to come, and a big year, a 2023 year that he will never forget, especially with what's coming up in August. All right, guys, like I said, special show today at noon. Jacob Wheeler, 6-time BPT champion, talking about his dominating win on Lake Gunnersville recently. And I talked with another angler who was part of that tournament. And dude, straight up, I said, what's the deal with this, man? Like, how did this go down? Did he have spots no one else was on? Was it a deal where, it said like in the article that he practiced, he was able to spend, he goes, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. He's that much better than us. He was fishing community holes and we were watching him catch 6-pounders. It's straight up, he just beat us with the bait, with the technique, with his understanding of what was going on. So noon today, which is Tuesday, Jacob Wheeler, and then Ben Milliken comes on for his recap show from Wheeler Lake tomorrow, and we will be giving away tomorrow a Denali Novus. That's all we got for today. Big shout out to Bryan New. Thanks. We will see everybody in a couple hours with Jacob Wheeler, or tomorrow if you choose not to watch that one. Later.